So I'm gonna be real with you. This is how my morning went. I woke up unreasonably early, and I realized that the Montreal Canadiens had traded away Brendan Gallagher. I also realized that the Vancouver Canucks, within the span of the same hour, traded Niels Höglander to the Nashville Predators. So we made our video talking about both Gally and Hoggy. It's available on the channel. You can check it out if you so please. And then I saw the trade between the Anaheim Ducks and the Florida Panthers, which involved Radko Gudas. And we made the video about that too. And the entire time, while we were going on to Elite Prospects, looking at these numbers, looking at the statistics of the guys that got moved, in my brain I was thinking, hey, why the hell is Maksymilian Szuber the #1 trending guy on Elite Prospects today? What does this guy have to offer, and why is he trending now? Well, it's because we actually missed out on a trade, and I didn't know about this until later in the day when I was scrolling through my Twitter posts, taking a look at what's going on. I saw Renaud Lavoie tweet out that Joshua Waugh signed a 2-way 1-year contract with the Utah Mammoth. And I was like, wait a minute, what the hell? Joshua Waugh's on the Mammoth? When did that happen? I guess the Montreal Canadiens, they didn't qualify him, and I guess he became a free agent, but I didn't know you're allowed to sign before July 1st. Today I learned. And then I realized, it was like, wait a minute, no, the Montreal Canadiens made a trade with the Utah Mammoth earlier this morning. Maksymilian Szuber heads over to Montreal in exchange for Joshua Waugh. It is a 1-for-1 deal between two prospects that haven't really had their fair share of NHL time. That's it. Now, this trade, if you break it down, there's a very big reason as to why this is going down the way it is. Joshua Waugh is a player that I think a lot of Montreal Canadiens fans, in hindsight, were wrong about. 22 years old, 6 feet, 192, a left-handed guy, winger center, drafted in the 5th round by the Montreal Canadiens in the 150th overall spot. Waugh, at one point in his draft career, was seen as a top prospect to be, because he was the #1 QMJHL draft pick all the way back in 2019. He came onto the scene with all of these expectations, and he absolutely lit up the junior AAA scene in Quebec. Waugh was supposed to be Quebec's finest. And inevitably, after some years in the queue with difficulty, he ended up getting traded from his St. John Sea Dogs team over to Sherbrooke, and he ended up getting drafted in the 5th round, despite the fact that earlier on, when Joshua was like 16 years old, we thought this guy was going to be a potential first-round NHL player. That's what we thought he had in store for him. But inevitably, he got taken 5th round, and that is when the tide seemed to change. Because the very next season, Joshua went out there in Sherbrooke and posted up a 119-point campaign in 66 games. Not bad for an 18-year-old in that stage of his career. The season after, he had 99 points in 55 Sherbrooke games, and then made his Montreal Canadiens debut shortly after. 9 points in 23 games in his opening year, 2 points in 12 games the year after that, and then only 3 games in 25-26, all with the Habs. The problem was, even though Josh Waugh was a legitimately good AHL scorer, this guy just did not belong in an NHL lineup in Montreal. He's 22 years old. He's young, there's a lot of time, and Utah wants to build on that. That's the kind of player they're getting. This is a guy that knows how to slow the game down. He can play with a very reasonable pace at times. Not the best pace, but he's out there. His hands, when you give him space, you give him room to move, that's where he's able to execute. He's got pretty good hockey IQ. There's a reason why he was able to mesh so well in the World Juniors alongside of Connor Bedard. That was one of the biggest examples of Josh Waugh showing off his talent. But there were a lot of conversations throughout the years of Josh Waugh being this super highly valued guy between his extremely highly productive QMJHL year to his World Junior production, there was this discussion going around saying, hey, Montreal should trade this guy while his value is up there. Get him off the team for a first-round pick, take the guaranteed returns, because a fifth-round draft pick turning into this guy that we have with all this value and all this production, that's awesome. Capitalize on it. But a lot of Habs fans were kind of thinking, no, like, Joshua's going to be amazing at the NHL level. I was one of them too. Like, I was a big believer in Joshua. And unfortunately, this previous season, we all just saw, hey, he wasn't really good enough to stay in the lineup. He didn't deserve a spot in the top 9. And you're not going to play this guy on the fourth line. That's not really an area that he is supposed to do well at. So that's just not in the cards for him. He's not better than the 6 other wingers that the Montreal Canadiens would ice out on the top 3 lines. So he's going over to Utah. We'll see how the Mammoth handle his development. And in return, the Montreal Canadiens are grabbing themselves Maksymilian Szuber, 23 years old, 6'3", 201, a left-handed defenseman out of Germany and Poland. A guy who was drafted in the 6th round by the Arizona Coyotes in the 2022 NHL Entry Draft. And if I'm not mistaken, that makes him an overager from that year's crop of guys, since he was an August 2002 birth date. But Szuber was a figurehead for EHC München in the German league before coming over to North America and suiting up in some AHL games. He did get one Arizona Coyotes game in 23-24, but that was it. Other than that, it's been all AHL all the time, plus some World Championship games here and there. He didn't make the Olympic team, unfortunately, but Maksymilian Szuber will add some extra depth to the Canadiens' D-core long-term, and most practically will help out Laval in what they are trying to do. Take a look at some of the replies over here. Does this mean a defenseman from Laval is coming up? Not necessarily. Szuber more or less takes William Trudeau's spot in Laval, who was traded last week. So I guess we will see whether or not this actually brings some NHL value for the Montreal Canadiens. People are going out there and buying his PSA 10 Young Gun Outburst cards now on social media. Joshua was never going anywhere in Montreal. Another win for Kent Hughes. Maksymilian Szuber is a 6'3" AHL defenseman, and that's what Montreal needs right now. Not every acquisition needs to be an NHL-ready player. He slides into Laval, adds size and physicality to a prospect pool that frankly needed some nastiness on the back end. A big, rangy defender who uses his reach to suppress plays before they start, the kind of unglamorous depth that quietly builds a winning team in Laval. Meanwhile, the folks on the Habs subreddit, they're not even talking about this trade. It happened before the Galley trade, and I totally missed it, so that's why we're going out there and talking about it now. But, yeah, Joshua Waugh, I'd say that he has the more flashy story, and the way in which he came up in Montreal was always going to be noteworthy for fans over here. Szuber could be an option as a 6D man in Montreal if either Struble or Arbor-Xhekaj gets traded. Another reply says, we lost William Trudeau, an AHL lefty, so I assume that this acquisition is to fill that lefty hole for the AHL team. Szuber has more NHL upside than Trudeau, though. More size and mobility, you can slot him in a third pairing and he'll do well. There was no use for him in Utah. There doesn't seem to be much more in Montreal unless management decides they want to move Struble or Xhekaj as trade pieces. So, change of scenery trade for both guys. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. How do you feel about this other deal the Montreal Canadiens pulled off with the Utah Mammoth, Maksymilian Szuber, in exchange for Joshua Waugh? I hope you enjoyed this. And bye.